115,000 finished homes are sitting empty on builder lots right now. And the last time that number was higher, the housing market was still digging out from the 2008 collapse. July 2009. That's the comparison. But here's what's different this time. And this is what Wall Street is desperately not telling you. In 2008, builders had a glut they couldn't sell. In 2026, builders have a glut they're paying buyers to take. 14% of the sales price at Lennar, 10.9% at Pulte Group, 10% of revenue at D.R. Horton. Stuart Miller, the executive chairman of Lennar, called normalized incentive levels 4 to 6% on the Q1 earnings call. We're nowhere near normalized. This is the Q1 2026 Homebuilder Bloodbath, and Wall Street is burying it under 310 basis points of margin compression and a Q2 forecast every public builder CEO is now calling the trough. 3 things to keep an eye on as this video unfolds. First, there's a Federal Reserve policy choice from 2022 that is the entire reason this is happening. And once you see the connection, it can't be unseen. Second, there's a number on Lennar's balance sheet that grew by $1.6 billion in 12 months while the company controlled 47,000 fewer home sites. And what that math means should terrify anyone holding builder stocks. And third, there are 11 specific states where new home inventory is now above pre-pandemic 2019 levels. And one of them has builders paying 10% of the sales price just to move metal. We're going to name every single one. If you own a home in any of those markets, your comps are about to get hit. If you're a buyer, you've never had more leverage. And if you're a seller, well, we'll get to you. To understand why Q1 2026 broke the home builder business model, you have to understand what these companies were doing for the last 2.5 years. While existing home sales cratered to 4.06 million in 2025, the lowest since 1995, the 4th straight annual decline, public builders kept growing, kept reporting record earnings, kept gaining share. The narrative was that they had cracked the code on a frozen market. Here's what they actually did. Every major public builder owns a captive mortgage company. D.R. Horton has DHI Mortgage. Lennar has Lennar Mortgage. Pulte Group has Pulte Mortgage. KB Homes has KBHS. These subsidiaries underwrite the loans on the homes their parent builds, then resell them to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In Q1 2026, Pulte Group's mortgage capture rate was 85%. The captive model is what makes the buy-down game work. A builder can quote a buyer 4.99% when Freddie Mac's prevailing rate is over 6.3%. Because the builder eats the cost of buying that rate down. Per John Burns Research and Consulting, knocking the rate down 1.5 costs the builder 5 to 6% of the sales price. On a $500,000 home, that's roughly $30,000 per house. The American Enterprise Institute's Housing Center tracks this. As of mid-2025, and the number has only grown since, 64% of new homes sold by the largest public builders used a permanent rate buy-down. Not temporary teasers, 30-year permanent reductions locked into the loan. In Q3 2025, per Realtor.com, the average mortgage rate for new construction buyers was 5.27%. For buyers of existing homes, 6.26%, a near 100 basis point spread paid for entirely out of builder margin. For 2 years, the model worked beautifully. Then, Q1 2026 happened. Look at the numbers from this earnings cycle, and you can hear the whole strategy snapping. Lennar reported on March 12th, net earnings dropped 56% year over year from $520 million to $229 million. Gross margin imploded from 18.7% to 15.2%, 350 basis points gone. Pulte Group reported April 23rd. Net income down 34%. Home sale gross margin compressed 310 basis points in a single quarter. Incentives jumped from 8% of price to 10.9%. KB Home was worse. Revenue down 23% in 90 days. Gross margin collapsed 490 basis points. The new CEO, Robert McGibney, who had just taken the job March 1st, slashed full-year revenue guidance by over $600 million in his first earnings call. Picture that, First quarter on the job, and the announcement is we're cutting guidance by over $500 million. And TriPoint is where it gets surreal. Earnings per share went from 70 cents to 8 pennies. 8 pennies. 89% profit collapse in a single year on roughly flat revenue. But it gets worse. Meritage Homes' margin fell to 17.5%. Beazer Homes posted a $32 million net loss. Even NVR, the gold-plated, debt-free, land-light operator that's supposed to be untouchable, saw its gross margin drop from 21.9% to 19.6%. D.R. Horton's CFO Bill Wheat said it bluntly on the April 21st call. Our sales incentives increased during the second quarter, and we expect incentives to remain elevated for the rest of the year. Roughly 73% of D.R. Horton's closings used a mortgage buydown. This isn't one bad builder. This isn't one bad region. This is the entire public home builder sector cracking under the same pressure at the same time. Which raises the obvious question, why now? If you're already seeing where this is going, do us a favor, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. What's coming in the next 2 videos on this channel is going to map directly onto decisions you might be making in the next 90 days. Now, back to the why. Here's the connection nobody on financial television wants to draw out loud. The Federal Reserve raised its benchmark rate from near zero in early 2022 to over 5% by mid-2023. That's the policy choice. The consequence? Combined with the fact that millions of Americans had refinanced into 30-year fixed mortgages at 3% during the pandemic, has a clean number, courtesy of economists at the Federal Housing Finance Agency. It's called the lock-in effect. The FHFA's working paper found that for every 1 percentage point gap between today's market mortgage rate and the rate someone is currently paying, the probability they sell their home drops by 18.1%. The paper estimates lock-in prevented 1.72 million home sales between 2022 and 24. Redfin's 2025 turnover report shows the result. Only 28 out of every 1,000 U.S. homes changed hands last year. The lowest turnover rate in more than 30 years. Here's the chain. The Fed hiked rates. Existing homeowners froze in place. Existing home sales hit the lowest level since 1995. And public builders, sitting on captive mortgage subsidiaries and the ability to buy down rates, captured the entire flow of buyers who still had to transact. That's what kept the new home market alive in 2024 and 25. Hey, that rhymed, kinda. But here's where the math turns. To capture those buyers, builders gave up 5 to 6% of every sales price in buydowns. As long as land costs stayed flat and rates trended down, the model held. In Q1 2026, the script flipped. Freddie Mac's 30-year fixed averaged 6% on March 5th. Then rates climbed back through the quarter, hitting 6.46 on April 2nd amid the Iran conflict and broader Treasury market pressure. On April 30th, the rate was still 6.3. Mortgage rates didn't fall. They sat in the high 6s for the entire quarter. Locked-in homeowners stayed locked in, and builders kept paying the buydown subsidy on land they'd bought in 2022, 23, and 24 at peak prices. Every closing was a margin hit they couldn't escape. That's the Fed failure spine of this story. Builder margins are getting destroyed because the Fed's policy environment forced builders to become the lender of last resort for affordability. And the same Fed environment is what's keeping rates too high to release them. It's about to get a lot worse for the builders carrying the heaviest spec inventory. This is the part Wall Street really doesn't want to talk about. The U.S. Census Bureau reported in January 2026 that the new home market had 9.7 months of supply, the highest reading since the global financial crisis. Resi Club Analytics ran the cross-check on completed unsold homes. Finished, ready to occupy, no buyer. The number hit 115,000 in January. The last time it was higher was July 2009. The depths of the post-Lehman housing wreckage. Cancellation rates are climbing across the board. D.R. Horton was at 16% of gross orders. Pulte Group hit 13% of starting backlog. Different metric, but up from 11 a year ago. LGI Homes, which serves the entry-level buyer with the most fragile qualification math, ran a 45.6% cancellation rate. Here are the 11 states where active inventory is now above pre-pandemic 2019 levels per Resi Club: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Idaho, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Washington. If you own in any of these, your comps are getting hit by builder discount pricing right now. If you're a seller, you're competing directly against a 4.99% buy-down the listing agent on the resale next door cannot offer. Florida builders are now spending an average of 10% of the sales price on incentives. On a $500,000 home, that's a $50,000 discount baked into the deal. Cotality, formerly CoreLogic, reports Florida home prices fell 2.3% year over year in February. The 5 U.S. metros with the highest probability of price decline in the country right now are all in Florida: Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Deltona, Daytona, Lakeland, Palm Bay, and West Palm Beach. Texas isn't far behind. Lennar's leadership has called Florida and Texas our two highest volume states where buyers needed more help than most other markets. Now, here's the supportable but controversial take. The biggest loser of the next 18 months in U.S. housing aren't going to be the builders who can survive a margin trough. They're not going to be the buyers who are getting an artificial discount. The biggest losers are going to be people who bought existing homes in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Colorado in 2022, 23, and 24 at peak prices, because the only buyer pool large enough to clear their listings is now being bid away by builder buy-downs those existing home sellers literally cannot match. The lock-in effect protected them on the way up. It's about to crush them on the way out. Disagree? Tell us in the comments. We read them all. If that take got under your skin, drop a like and tell us where we're wrong. We want to hear it. And subscribe if you want the next video where we're breaking down the exact metros where this dynamic plays out first. Now, to the part of the earnings reports where builders quietly admit they don't believe their own optimism. Land impairments, the charges builders take when they own land that's no longer worth what they paid for it. Once you start tracking these, the public narrative falls apart fast. Q1 2026 was a parade. Toll Brothers booked $13 million in inventory impairments and write-offs. Meritage took $2.4 million in real estate impairments, plus another $1.4 million walking away from terminated land deals. Pulte Group recorded $6 million. NVR, gold-plated, debt-free NVR, booked $75.9 million in contract land deposit impairments for full year 2025. KB Home went a step further, abandoning contracts on 3,400 lots that no longer met their underwriting standards. That's not an impairment number. That's a builder choosing to eat the deposit money rather than build on the dirt at all. These charges are the financial equivalent of a confession. They're builders looking at land they bought in 2022 and 23 and saying, in writing, that they will never make money on it. Lennar is the most interesting case. The company has cut its home building inventory in half over 2 years, from $20 billion to $10.5 billion. They've moved to a land-light model where 98% of home sites are controlled via options. Here's the number from The Hook. An investigation by Hunter Brook Media looked at Lennar's balance sheet line called Deposits and Pre-Acquisition Costs. Between February 2025 and February 2026, that line grew from $5.2 billion to $6.8 billion, a $1.6 billion increase. Over the same period, Lennar's controlled home sites fell by roughly 47,000. They controlled less land, but the deposits and pre-acquisition cost line went up significantly. What that suggests, according to analysts including Stephen Kim at Evercore, is that Lennar is capitalizing option fees and infrastructure spending on the balance sheet today that will amortize as gross margin headwinds tomorrow. Costs that are, in Kim's words, paid in cash but capitalized on the balance sheet. In plain English, the margin pressure you saw in Q1 2026 may not be a trough. It may be a floor held up by accounting choices. Now, look at the forward-looking data. The Census Bureau reported in late April that March 2026 single-family housing starts spiked to 1.03 million on a seasonally adjusted annualized rate, the highest since December 2024. Sounds bullish, Then look at building permits, down 10.8% month over month and 7.4% year over year. Permits are the leading indicator. Starts are coincident. Builders are finishing what they already broke ground on. They're not signing up for new projects. The NAHB Wells Fargo Housing Market Index, builder sentiment itself, fell to 34 in April, 62% below the November 2020 peak. 60% of builders are using sales incentives, 13 straight months. 36% are cutting prices outright. The builders themselves are telling you what 2027 looks like. You just have to read the disclosures. Now, the part that translates to your bank account. Take a $400,000 home, 10% down, a $360,000 loan, 30-year fixed. At today's market rate of 6.3%, principal and interest is $2,229 a month. At a builder buy-down rate of 4.99, $1,931, a $298 monthly difference. Over 30 years, roughly $107,000 in interest savings. If you're a buyer right now, this is the most leverage you've had since the housing market unfroze. You can negotiate the rate, the closing costs, the upgrades, and in many Sunbelt markets, the price itself. But understand the trade. The buy-down is being eaten by the builder out of margin, and the home's listed price is being held above where pure resale comps would put it. If you sell in 3 years, the buy-down does not transfer. If you're a seller of an existing home in any of those 11 states, your direct competition is a brand new home with a 4.99% rate locked in for 30 years. You can't match that. Your only lever is price, and the price you can get is being set by what the builder next door discounted yesterday. If you're a homeowner with no plans to move, your equity is the lock-in effect. About 30% of U.S. mortgages are still in 3 to 4% rate bucket, though that share is shrinking every quarter as people move, refinance, or pass away. Your house is a financial asset that pays you to stay put. Don't sell it casually. The math on replacing it is brutal. Every move-up trade right now is a payment shock trade. And if you hold builder stocks, every major builder is calling Q2 the trough. They were also calling Q4 of 2025 the trough, and Q4 of 2024 the trough. At some point, you have to ask whether the trough is a quarter or whether the trough is the new floor. If this is the kind of housing market analysis you want more of, the part Wall Street and CNBC won't say out loud, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell. What's happening in the public home builder sector right now is the slowest motion margin collapse in American real estate history. And we're watching it in real time, in plain text, in the SEC filings. We'll see you in the next video, and until then, read the earnings calls. The CEOs are telling you exactly what's coming. You just have to listen.